Hey there, welcome back to Needed Conversations with Ryan and Victoria Cole. Thank you guys for joining us for this month, March. I cannot believe it's already March. This time has been flying by. We had so many things that we have already accomplished, but we still have so many other things to look forward to. Are you excited?
Yes, it's just a lot that we're planning, one of which is our Forevermore Marriage Getaway. It's coming back, and it's going to be on Labor Day weekend, August the 30th and 31st, right here in Greenville, South Carolina, at Hotel Hartness. We have opened up early registration, so you can go to forevermoregetaway.com to get that early bird pricing and join us for 2 fantastic days of luxury, but also encounters. We're going to be having worship and teaching, and we're going to have a banquet that evening. So much. We're going to be putting out more details in the days to come. But if you want to go ahead and grab one of those limited spots, go to forevermoregetaway.com. And also, our intentional marriage community is in full steam. You can be a part of that online community by being a partner with our ministry. Go to moremostforever.com, click that intentional marriage banner, and sign up so that you can get weekly devotionals, monthly date ideas, groups, sessions online, and so much more. Curated courses. It's just all there for you as a partner to Empowered Culture Ministries. Again, go to moremostforever.com. I'm very excited because we're rolling into a new series talking about collaboration in marriage. How can you and your spouse partner for a greater purpose? And furthermore, once you understand that purpose, what are the skills that you need to develop to be able to be effective in that collaboration, so you're not always bumping heads? We're going to be talking about communication. We're going to be talking about how to identify, your spouse's gifts and recognize the gaps that need to be filled. Collaboration is so important because your marriage was made for more. It was made for more than just the 9-to-5 grind of waking up and going through the robotic motions and feeling like you're living with a roommate, right? Your marriage was destined for greatness, for God's glory to be revealed. But if you never figure out how to move in sync with your partner, you're always going to feel like oil and water. And so this month, we're going to be helping you to overcome those challenges. And anything you want to say?
Yeah, for sure. Like, one of the things that I would like to say is a lot of times couples don't experience or kind of hit this wall until they actually start working together, probably in the phase of when they become parents, because the majority of the couples probably don't work together. I think there's not as many couples that actually have to stay at home, maybe work on the same job. It's very rare, I feel like. But I think once the couple hits that parenting season and now you have to collaborate, that's a very challenging thing for a lot of people to go through. So I think that these strategies are definitely going to help you to not only do that with your spouse, but I think it's going to help you become a better individual so you can collaborate with other people as well on your job.
Yeah, all of these skills are transferable for sure, but specifically with your marriage, we're going to help you guys to be a stronger team, and then in turn build a stronger family as your kids are able to watch you guys work together through the personality differences. You never know how strong you are until you're tested. Well, marriage is a big testing ground. If you haven't experienced that yet, just give it a little bit of time. And the conflicts that you have make you better as a couple.
Yeah, for
Your
sure.
resolve is stronger and so on. So this is going to be a fantastic message. Share this with someone. But before we jump into the meat of that, we love to start our podcast with a marriage strategy of the week. Victoria, what do we have for them today?
The strategy of the week is to communicate with love. And I actually thought it would be kind of cool for us to break down the word love in an acronym, so LOVE, and give you guys 4 tips on how to learn how to effectively communicate throughout your week.
And if you could just remember this little word, communicate with love. Whenever you want to respond with a harsh reaction or a harsh tongue, just stop and say, okay, how can I respond with love? And that means you got to start with the letter L, which is?
L is for listening. Active listening involves paying attention to your partner, acknowledging their feelings without rushing to respond or judge. This means being present and showing empathy. And this is something that we've talked many, many times, and you've heard the strategy about listen to understand versus listening to respond. And that's going to help you so much if you could just remember that phrase, that I am not trying to pick out what my spouse is saying in order for me to defend myself. You guys are on the same team, speaking of collaboration. So
That moves
try
you from a
to-
defensive,
yeah.
competitive posture
You're on the same
to a
team.
collaborative posture.
Yeah, you have to think about it that you're on the same team. You're not an opposing team. And so learn to actively listen and understand what your spouse is saying, because you could be saying the same thing, but maybe you have a different understanding or a different perspective that you're looking at. So,
Yes. And that's why the letter O is important. O is for open. So we want to make sure that when we're talking with our spouse, that we're open and honest with our feelings, with our thoughts. That's because transparency is key to building trust and understanding in the relationship. Even though it's uncomfortable, if you don't communicate what you're truly feeling, then you can't blame your spouse for misinterpreting who you are as a
Yeah.
person, what your likes and dislikes are. Don't be afraid to speak up, but not in a criticizing or demeaning way, but just in a very vulnerable way. We just had our intentional marriage date night. It was our in-person event. We had marriage mentors there. And the wife, they've been married 52 years. She talks to women all the time about, even as it relates to sex, voicing and saying, listen, if you give that man the thumbs up, you're lying to yourself, you're lying to him, and you're not doing him any favors by just stroking his ego and making him feel good. And then you living your entire marriage without ever experiencing the type of satisfaction that you could. So you got to be open with one another. And then V,
is for validate. Validate each other's feelings and experiences. Acknowledgement doesn't mean agreement, but it shows respect for the other person's perspective. And I think even how we were talking about another strategy that we said before is echoing, is hearing out that person and saying, I hear what you're saying, and I am sorry that I made you feel this way. It wasn't my intention.
when your spouse is open and transparent with you, just acknowledge, I understand what you're saying. I hear you. I see you. I may not fully understand it yet, but give me some time and I'll get there. Right. But so that they feel like they're not always being attacked for their experiences and for what they are perceiving in the situation. And again, like Victoria said, it doesn't mean you agree. Everybody has their perspectives. The truth is the truth, but it's just acknowledging that their feelings matter. Yeah. So what is E?
E is empathize. So trying to understand and share the feelings of your partner. Empathy builds emotional connection and shows you care about their experiences as much as your own.
Yeah, I think that's important. They all kind of flow together. Talk about empathy a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, just being there, I think a lot of couples struggle with whenever their spouse is feeling depressed, maybe even for longer periods of time, is, maybe they've never went through depression and they have a hard time figuring out, like, how can I support my spouse? But I think just being present with them and praying for them and covering for them, it shows empathy to that person, even if you have not experienced it for yourself.
And I think the key difference between validation and empathy is the validation doesn't necessarily have to have the understanding with it. It's just acknowledgement that I'm hearing you. And though I don't understand it, I'm going to put the work in to try and see from your perspective. The empathy is actually getting there. It's taking some time to pray about your spouse and their perspective and what they shared with you, and then being able to sit and say, okay, I understand now from their context, from their point of view.
Maybe putting on their shoes for a minute so you
Yes.
could understand. But yeah, those are the 4 things that you should remember that will help you to communicate better with love. That is, listen, open, validate, and empathize.
Yeah, LOVE. I'm thinking of that song. L is for the way you listen to me. O is being open. I thought that.
Wow, that was cheesy, but
There you go.
there
V
you
is validating all my extra feelings. E is empathizing with me. Won't you do it, baby?
see. We're writing
Wow,
lyrics
that was
down.
horrible. That's your marriage strategy of the week. All right, let's jump into this main message. We're talking about collaboration. I think this is one of the most important things that you could learn as a couple. And it may sound off the cuff as like this more corporate way of approaching the relationship. This doesn't sound romantic or sexy. Collaborating. That sounds like something I'd learn in the workplace.
Like I'm on a
Well,
Zoom call or something, yeah.
to be honest though, the more you can learn to have a rhythm with your spouse throughout your day-to-day activity, the easier it's going to be to connect romantically.
Mhm,
Because the reason I think by and large for women why they don't feel like they can engage in the bedroom is because they've got all of these cares that they're holding in their mind, and so they need to alleviate those cares to engage. Well, the opposite is actually true with men. Men carry the cares, and sex is a way for them to alleviate the cares in their mind.
mm,
So you have to work with one another collaboratively so that when you get to that place where you're trying to cultivate romance, both of you are fully engaged, right?
mhm. And yeah, and every couple's collaboration will look different, and especially in different seasons, you have to recognize, what your specific marriage needs and how you can support one another in whatever season that you guys are going through. So,
Although I do think that more and more couples are starting to do businesses together,
yeah.
entrepreneurship. I think our generation, millennials, like kicked open the door for the younger generation to say, you know what? I don't want to be stuck in a cubicle all of my life. And so we're finding ways to be sort of independent. We have a lot of side hustles that we want to be our main hustle,
Mhm.
and it's just grinding that dream even when you get off of work. But I think what you said at the beginning of this episode, the first area where you're going to collaborate is parenting, and then creating a household structure where everybody can thrive in their gift and in their calling, and an environment of peace, the allocation of household responsibilities. That's your first area of collaboration. If you can master that,
Then I feel like once you become a parent, I think it'll become easier because now it's not compiled to we have not even talked about allocation of household duties, and now we have this baby to take care of, and we're sleep deprived,
and
and
those
we get angry.
those duties change.
Yeah,
But what I think I was saying was that, like, if you can master your home, whether that be before or after kids, then when you step into some kind of business or ministry collaboration with your spouse, you kind of already know,
like how they function.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there are certain qualities that make up a good collaboration, whether that be your favorite duo or duet that you hear on the radio, right? And it may be two different genres. It may be pop and rap, or it may be country and rock, or like I love some of these episodes on YouTube where they do mashups or crossovers between two artists that come from vastly different backgrounds, and it just makes sense. And it's because they're leaning into their strengths, and they're able to give a little bit in areas where they're uncomfortable, where this is not how I would normally sing, or lyrics or the style, but I'm giving the other person time to shine too. And we're making something altogether new by blending our gifts together. And so we've come up with 5 characteristics of an amazing collaboration, especially in marriage. Let's start at the top. Every good collaboration starts with the foundation of value.
Mhm.
Value is knowing what each of you bring to the table. When each person comes into that collaboration with a level of value and respect for their partner's contributions, viewpoints, and skills, this lays the groundwork for creativity and productivity to flourish. I know that was a mouthful, but plainly put, do you know what your spouse is carrying? Their gifts, their talents, and how that sort of lays juxtaposed to your own. So, a part of that value is understanding what their strengths are and how they differ from yours. That way, you can start aligning where you complement, where one of you is stronger than the other. And then I think one of the most important elements, which is after we recognize our strengths and weaknesses, where are there still gaps?
Mhm.
Right? Where are there areas in this collaboration where neither of us is strong? And so there we might need to bring in some outside help. We might need to bring in a third partner or somebody who can help support this collaboration that we have going on. And it may be as simple as both of you are thriving in your careers, albeit different career paths. And you're okay with doing household responsibilities, but at the end of the day, you're still struggling with who's doing the laundry, who's making the food, etc. So that may be you sitting down and saying, there's this gap here where neither of us are strong at and neither of us have a desire for. Since both of us are working, what is it going to cost us to send out our laundry? I know there's
Mhm.
services that you can use where they weigh it and it's relatively inexpensive, all things considered, right? Or planning a food service like HelloFresh, or this is not a promotion. We've tried some of these ourselves and they're great. The food is
Yeah.
good.
And you get all the stuff down to every single ingredient, so you don't have to worry about buying big items and wasting.
And then you're not competing with one another, rather not competing. You're not putting pressure on one another other to perform in a way or with a capacity that they don't have to give. That you're recognizing, okay, I'm strong here, you're strong here, but there's still these gaps, and
Yeah.
every couple will have them.
And at the end of the day, like Ryan said, everybody has 24 hours in a day. And when life gets busy, you have to weigh and figure out, is it worth your peace? Is it better to like hire somebody out to take care of that so that you guys can come home and actually relax and actually do what's important, maybe take care of your kids or focus on your marriage. So some of those things you can offset and make sure that you guys are bringing value to the table, but at the same time, making sure that you outsource whatever you need to outsource so that you have your peace in your home.
And I think constantly keeping that in front of you is important because you could be in your grind and your gifts while your spouse is in theirs. And it may be a work intensive season and you feel like you're carrying the burden by yourself because your spouse isn't jumping into the area where you're strong, right?
Mhm.
But if you don't sit back and recognize, hey, my spouse is just as busy as me, just in different areas, then you might start to feel bitterness or animosity towards them, like, I'm carrying all the weight. What are you doing? There are
Mhm.
several times my wife and I have had to have conversations about, like, she didn't always see what I was doing at work,
Yeah,
even if
and
I was
it's
in an office downstairs somewhere.
yeah, and a lot of time and it kind of flows into number 2, which is effective communication. Like when you're so into the grind, like your nose head into the ground and it's just hard for you to focus. Sometimes you don't communicate all the stuff that you have on your plate and the stresses that you're carrying, and then it's like it builds up to this big thing and there's an outburst, and it's like, I just really don't feel supported. Neither one of you feels supported, but it's like once you sit down and your spouse expresses, "Well, this is what I'm carrying and this is all that I'm doing." You kind of have an understanding like, "Wow, I really didn't realize this is all the stuff that my spouse is doing. They're just not wanting to stress me out about this stuff, but they are, doing all of this work." But I think that also gives an opportunity for you guys to sit down and say, maybe this season we need to figure out a better strategy or adjust something in order for us to go through this busy season. And then in a few months or weeks, we can renegotiate whatever it is that we need to renegotiate.
Right. So, number two is effective communication. Every successful collaboration is built on value first and then layered with good communication. This involves clear, honest, and open exchanges. This ensures that both individuals are on the same page, understand each other's expectations, and can address any issues or misunderstanding promptly, right away. So, we're going to be getting into detail with this in the upcoming episodes because I believe that this deserves time to break down in and of itself. Communication, I think, is the source of a lot of marital woes.
Mhm.
Whether it's sex, money, parenting, it all breaks down to one common denominator: lack of communication. Or it's not that you're not talking, but you're not
Yeah.
communicating effectively. But there are a few things that I want to touch on in this topic for today's episode. The first being is, in order to have effective collaboration, you have to have a clear expectation of the outcomes. That means that you have a clear and mutual understanding of the goals and the overall vision of the collaboration. That's crucial. When both of you are aligned with what you aim to achieve, it's easier to make decisions prioritize tasks, and stay motivated. So
Mhm.
when you're casting a vision, you're looking and saying, what is the end goal that we have to put front of mind? And then be able to say, what is the strategy or the milestones that we're going to put in place to see that we get there? Now, when we talk about vision, we say you should look 20 years out into the future and then start scaling back 10 years, 5 years. What's the thing we're going to accomplish this 1 year? And come back to it every single year so you can say, 365 days from today, where do we want to be? Chart a course to there and then develop a strategy that will help you move from point to point. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that I would bring up kind of an example that way you guys can relate a little bit better. Like we're fixing up a house and we had to actually write out a timeline because we have a specific time frame that we're actually moving into the house. And so we kind of had to do phase one. And so we actually broke it down week by week. And both of us have that list so that we can know and we won't deviate from the plan and be distracted by doing something else than what is on the list. And that helps us to keep track of not only our budget, our finances, but also just making sure that we're staying on top, staying on schedule. And every single week we're chipping away at this goal. And then, you'll look back in a month or two, it's like, wow, we actually did quite a bit of work and we've accomplished it.
Yeah.
But it's because we've actually been very intentional about writing those things down. Like Ryan is very busy. He has his own work and I do a lot of work. I do homekeeping and I do my own business stuff. And so it's kind of hard for us if it's not written down. A lot of times, another effective way of communicating is actually writing it down so you guys can see it visually. And I've also talked about even having like a monthly calendar, whatever works for you. Maybe Ryan does Google Calendar, that works for him. I do mine normally in my calendar or in my scheduling book, and that really helps me to stay on top.
And
So
then we have a shared note through the Apple's Notes app, and we just collaborate there. We have different folders, whether it be house, ministry. So even today, we're reading off of shared notes in our
we
both
work
of our
together. Yeah.
devices that we've added to about this episode, what we want to contribute. And then the same as with our house project. And let me tell you this, nothing tests a marriage more
Uh,
than a home renovation project.
yeah.
And
Especially
that's
with strong, personalities, like, some people.
opinions, design
Yeah.
aesthetics, you know.
Some people's dynamic is, like, one is, like, normally they don't care about the design, and they're just the fixer, they're the ones that build, and they're just told what to do, and then the other one is normally the design. Well, in our case, we're kind of both the
We
designers,
both are the designers and we both have our
are
hand in
are both in
to
construction,
like she's
and
focusing on certain areas like drywall and arches and I'm focused on like electrical and some of the other little items and then at the end we're like, okay, what do we want this to look like? And so I don't know. I encourage every couple do at least one home renovation
hang a
project,
wallpaper.
even if it's a laundry room or one wall of wallpaper. That's a good team building exercise, you know? A part of that effective communication, the other thing I want to touch on is constructive feedback, right? This is the ability to give and receive feedback in a constructive way so that you both can grow and improve. Effective collaborators know how to provide feedback in a way that is helpful, respectful, and aimed at enhancing the collaboration. I think that you have to learn your spouse when is the best time to approach them and soften the blow a little bit. Don't patronize them. I think sometimes we can kind of make them feel like blow them up a little bit and then all of a sudden give them and then they think, "Oh, did you really mean all of the other compliments?" It's not about manipulating your spouse. It's just saying, "Hey, I want to bring something up with you. When is the best time? Is now good?" And then say, "Listen, it bothers me when you do such, such, and such." Or, "I think that what you're doing works to a certain degree, but I think that we need to change it up to make it more effective, and here's why." And
Mhm.
again, back to our home renovation example, I'm very OCD with certain things, and Victoria is she's more big picture. And so she is looking like down the line, let me fill up my Amazon cart and start getting the ball rolling. Let's get this thing moving. I'm like, before the first hammer goes to swinging, we need to know down to every dot and tittle what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how we're going to execute it, and what timeline and what order. And she's like, I'm just ready to go. Just put me to work. Like,
Well, it's not that I'm breezing through either. Like I do think about timeline. I do think about like the look of it and everything. I think that Ryan's value is that he is more particular about certain things, and so and he is more business savvy. I would have to say that I'm probably that's not my gifting. He's really good at paperwork. He's really good at like viewing like the contracts or any of that. That's kind of has been
but
biggest
that
thing, but
perfectionism can be an Achilles heel as well, because I think that,
overanalyzing
right. I
can be
mean,
sometimes difficult.
done is better than perfect. And I've had to learn that and swallow that and say, we're going to come into this house and everything is not going to be like a designer home.
Well,
That's
and it's an
okay.
older home too, so it's like retrofitting sometimes.
Yeah, every wall and everything is not going to be perfectly straight or aligned. But guess what? We're going to push the envelope and we're going to do the best of our ability. And I'm going to push her as far as I think that she can go. And then I'm going to back off because I feel like that I'm learning, sometimes not always, but I'm learning kind of her threshold, and choosing my battles is important. Like at the end of the day, is this important that is that this is perfected, or would I rather put my energy towards perfecting something else? And so we're learning to deal with that constructive feedback from both ends. But those are kind of the two pillars of effective communication when collaborating with your spouse, is just setting clear expectations and outcomes. That solves a lot right off the bat. And then being open to constructive feedback, which leads to number three. Effective collaborations always has this hybrid of trust and accountability,
Mhm.
which kind of rolls out of that constructive feedback, because trust is essential for any partnership or any relationship, because it involves believing in that other person's capabilities, reliability, and your shared dedication to this particular goal. And that trust builds a strong foundation for taking risks and making decisions confidently. But you have to realize that trust isn't blind. So, in one sense, you don't want to be overly analytical to where your spouse feels micromanaged. Like, listen, we said that I was going to take care of this. You trust that I'm going to do it, and how I'm going to approach it may be different than what you did, but we've agreed I'm going to take care of it. And
Yeah.
how I get there doesn't matter as much as when I get it done. But on the other end of things, no matter who you are, no matter how much trust is put in place, all of us need accountability. We have to trust and verify. And you need systems of accountability in order to see that what you're working towards has clear deadlines, quality of work, breaking that down to the to make more sense, right? It's a marriage of trust and accountability. Trust that if they don't take the path you would, they're still going to get it done because they told you they would.
But it may not be done your way, and that's
But
okay.
having accountability to maybe help ease your nerves would be making sure you set clear deadlines in place and check in with them and say, hey, I know we've got this deadline coming up. How are you doing with that? Do you need any support? Right?
Mhm.
One of the very simplest examples I always give to wives is the taking out the trash example. Like, you tell a man, can you take out the trash? He's going to tell you yes. 10 minutes later, the trash is still sitting there. And now you're irritated at him. And he's already made a plan of sorts in his mind that, oh, when I go out to work this morning, I'm going to take it out then. Or before we go to bed, when I'm walking through and cutting out all the lights, I'm going to take that trash and put it out to the curb. You didn't communicate when you wanted it and why you wanted it on that particular timeline, and neither did he. And so there you are, frustrated. Even if you say take out the trash and the next day it's not taken out, how did he know it was take out the trash, or whether or not you were concerned about making sure the trash as a whole was taken to the curb to be picked up by the garbage can? I know it sounds simple and elementary. This is how men's minds work. If you say, "Honey, I need your strong arms to help me out with taking out this trash because I'm cooking dinner and I need a free trash can. Can you do that right now?" And for him to agree and say, "Yes, I can," or giving him the liberty to say, "I'm right in the middle of something. If you'll give me 10 minutes, it'll be done." But leaving it ambiguous and then complaining almost feels like you didn't trust them at all to make
Mhm.
a plan. So it's this hybrid of trust and accountability that's going to help fuel better collaborations.
Yeah, and just as long as you communicated that, some men do need accountability, and some men say that they will do something and they don't, even if you give them a timeline. So just, making sure that you keep each other in check and have clear communication.
Hey, laziness is laziness. And if somebody doesn't live up to their word, that has to be confronted.
Yeah.
But at the end, you have to, have that trust and measures of accountability. So
And it kind of flows into the fourth point, which is flexibility and adaptability. I think we all kind of go into marriage, and oftentimes we can be very selfish because we want things done our
we're
way.
set in our ways,
Yeah.
especially if you marry older,
Older. Yeah.
right? You have already these rhythms
You
that
have
you're
a rhythm,
accustomed to.
you're not willing to kinda let go of those rhythms, but I think in marriage, you have to be very flexible in, and understanding why your spouse does certain things, and they may not do the things that you do. Like, for example, I like to take a shower in the morning. I mean, in the evening, and Ryan likes to take a shower in the morning, and that's completely different, and I could kind of fight him on that and why mine is way is better than his, but that's what works for him, and I have
I
to be
think,
flexible about
especially on
that.
days when I'm sitting at the house in the office, like I've not gotten dirty. Granted, we're in the middle of a home reno, right? So
So
when we
he'll
go
take
and
some in
work,
the
of course,
evening
I'm not
and
going to come
morning,
home
yeah.
and get in the bed dirty. I'm
Just to
mindful of that.
clarify
Just
that,
to
yeah.
clarify, our bed is not disgusting. But I think by and large, taking a shower in the morning is reinvigorating. Like I know The Rock says that he takes like 3 showers a day.
Mm,
Like the one in the morning is ice cold, and then he goes and works out, and then he takes a hot shower, and then he takes a shower before the bed. Everybody's different, whatever works for their mental health and their natural rhythm. I was just telling Victoria today, I think I need to change up my routine a little bit because I'm not even getting to do that at this point because we wake up and I've been the one in charge of taking the kids to school. She picks them up. Maybe we need to change it up a little bit, do something different to kind of get us out of our heads a little bit. And sometimes that needs to happen just in general, not just because you're collaborating, but I think every person needs a shock to their schedule and their routine every once in a while to wake them up out of the monotony of life. So, flexibility and adaptability is important because it allows collaborators to navigate challenges. Unexpected obstacles will come. And in order to be more effective in your collaboration, you're going to have to be open to new ideas, adjusting plans, finding creative solutions together. And with that, you have to have layers of patience
mhm.
and compassion in order to be flexible. So, in everything you do, understanding and supporting each other, especially during those challenges, is important. Back to what we talked about in our marriage strategy, empathy is going to help in this, right? And seeing where your spouse feels overwhelmed and stepping in and feeling those feelings with them and lifting the burden. But at the end of the day, no project comes out exactly 100% as you expect. We talked a
Yeah.
little bit earlier about setting that vision in place and setting milestones and markers and all of that. But guess what? Some curveball may be thrown into the mix. You expect one outcome or circumstances in the world. I mean, think of people who are in Ukraine living their everyday lives, and then, the war breaks out. And now they've moved with their families and they're living in a whole nother place and a whole nother career. You never know how your life is going to be thrown into sort of upheaval. To be honest, those could be the greatest opportunities for creativity. And if you allow the Holy Spirit to speak to you during those challenging times, maybe something unexpectedly great could emerge from the greatest of life's challenges. And so being flexible and not set in your ways will enable you to, you know, dodge the curveballs and take the turns when they come and help you to say, recalculating, just like you would with a GPS. Okay, so we
Mhm.
had to take a turn here. The road was blocked. The other night, we were coming home from our marriage event, and we got some texts right before we were leaving that there was a major accident right outside of where the church was. So we come out, and really the only main road to get us to home was completely blocked off. And the
Mhm.
police was waving in both directions, like, go left or right, I don't care, but you're not coming through here. So we were like, what are we going to do? We tried to go in through the parking lot. There was no outlet there. And so we turned around. We went back the opposite direction. So we had to
Mhm.
backtrack, turned left, went up through a back road, and then turned on the GPS. The GPS initially wanted to take us back down to the same place that was blocked off. So we made a couple of other weird turns to just kind of confuse the GPS. And finally, it recalculated around the accident and got us home safely. And so that's kinda how your life is sometimes. It could be the election. Whoever's president affects the economy, affects the outcomes of certain business, proposals that you have in mind, or emergence of new technologies. Let's think of that, right? You may have set a business plan in place without considering the possibility of technological advancements that may make your business model obsolete or the services that you offer no longer relevant. You've got to learn how to pivot and be flexible enough to do so with your spouse. Or what's going to happen is you're going to start pointing fingers, you're going to be offended with them, and you're going to find yourself at a dead end.
Mhm.
And that's when you're really going to have problems. Allow yourself to emerge out of these obstacles with creativity.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I would have to say is, we're teaching our daughter Mila. She struggles sometimes with things not going exactly her way, and it frustrates her. And we keep telling her, sometimes life throws curveballs, and sometimes things happen, and you have to learn to be content with the situation and say, well, we've planned for it and we were excited about it, but things are just not happening, and it's okay. We'll still figure out something different, something new, and we can't allow our emotions to build up to something that it's just not even going to do anything for us. It's like worrying about something that you cannot help. So you have to be very content. I mean, Paul said that, I'm content in little and I'm content in much. And there are seasons where there's ebbs and flows. And when you have the peace of God that surpasses all understanding, then it's not going to be pointing to others instead of, saying, I'm going to keep my peace regardless of what's going on. God is in control, and I'm going to trust in his timing and in his process, and that there's a reason for what it is that we're going through. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads to our fifth and final characteristic of a successful collaboration, and that is commitment, right? At the end of the day, no matter what challenges you face, to know that we are in it for the long haul. A
mm,
strong commitment to the collaboration and its outcomes helps ensure that both of you stay engaged and motivated, even when faced with difficulties. And know that you're not going to throw in the towel, that even when your mission feels like it's failing or stalled out, that both of you are going to be there together to see that that dream is resurrected, reworked, or restarted in some way. I think that who we are as individuals is defined by how we handle adversity and failure. When failure is presented to us, I think that the real us comes to the surface.
yeah.
It's easy when things are going your way, but when you've got to pivot, will you still stay committed or will you throw in the towel? Do you have strong resolve to say it may not have turned out the way that I wanted it to, but I am going to see what God can make of it anyway.
Mm.
So, commitment is your final characteristics of a successful collaboration.
Yeah. Long suffering, endurance, those are all qualities
Yes.
of a Christian, and that's what God has called us to do. But through
Divorce is
him,
never an option.
yeah, through him, we can do all things, and we can just lean on one another and God will lead us through those challenging times.
I think that you have to have that. So, well, I hope that you've enjoyed today's opening message on collaboration. We're going to talk about this all month. We also have a special interview coming up with another couple. They're authors, successful authors, actually, best selling on Amazon. And they're going to be talking about how prayer is instrumental in helping you collaborate more effectively. And also, we're going to talk about parenting, since that's one of the biggest collaborations you'll ever
Mm, yeah.
make with your spouse. But next week, we're going to be talking about what is a creative process and why every couple should have one, right? And that's really getting into the nitty-gritty of now we've determined what our outcome is. What is the pathway that's going to get us there and what works every single time? I'm going to reveal that to you next week, the creative process that you need to implement in your marriage. But yeah, make sure you share this, and we have one more segment for you, which is our Q&A.
Question of the week is, what are effective ways to manage our family time and ministry commitments without one overshadowing the other? And I'm going to start this one off, and then Ryan can kind of add his point of view on this. To me, I always say my first ministry is my family. And a lot of times people want to go out and do ministry and neglect their children, neglect their spouse, neglect the first responsibility that God gives you. You know, discipleship making process starts at home. And it's not to say that your home is always going to be perfect, but you have to have things in order. Your children need to be in order, your house needs to be in order, and you need to do the best you can to have that ready. And then whenever you have that foundation, then you'll feel more supported to do ministry outside. And not only that, you know, the way we are living as a family, as a unit, displaying the marriage is actually speaking louder than words. I mean, one of the biggest things that I would say about our mentors is, you know, oftentimes they're very humble about like, do we have anything to offer? Like, you guys keep inviting us. But they do. They have a lot of wisdom. But I think the greatest thing that they share is their life before people. It's just the way they love one another just displays Christ in such a profound way that it's affected their children. Their children are loving individuals. They love God. They serve God. And that is reflective of that. And so that to me speaks louder than any words. I mean, that first and foremost is your mission to the world, to say my marriage is glorifying God and my children are serving the Lord and my house is in order. And now I am willing vessel and I'm ready to be used by God outside of my home, and my family supports me and is along for the ride.
Well, it's engrafted into that great commission, right? To go into all the world and preach the gospel, first in Judea, then Samaria, then the uttermost parts of the world. What does that mean? Start here. Start at home with your spouse, with your children, and then allow your influence to begin to expand outwards instead of having these superficial goals of reaching outward and then years down the line looking and seeing that your family is falling apart. The other thing that I think that we need to address with this question is this overarching idea that ministry is somehow separate and apart from the rest of your life. I think we separate career and calling. What if your calling is in your career?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that the same is with family. Like, I have my family time and I have my ministry time. So that's something I do over there when I go to church and when I serve, or when I get on, even pastors, when I get on the pulpit and preach. This is my ministry. No, actually not. And I could go even further to say the fivefold ministry isn't really about ministry. It's about equipping saints for ministry. So really, the pastor, the evangelist, the teacher, they're really not in ministry. They're in equipping, right? And the average believer who will never hold a microphone is to go and minister in their sphere of influence, with their family, in the grocery store, in their career. And so I think when we have this more integrated approach to ministry, that changes everything. That means I'm not trying to have this balancing act of where ministry begins and family ends. And like, then it's like, you definitely need boundaries. Know when to take a phone call, know when to not take a phone call. You can't minister to two people at one time
Yeah.
with different circumstances. You can't minister to your family and be on the phone helping a drug addict at the same time. That drug addict might need help, but you have to ask yourself, who needs my attention first? That challenge is going to be there. God's going to send someone to help them, and it may be you, but guess what? It can wait until dinner is over most of the time.
Yeah.
There are extenuating circumstances or challenges, family, situations, crisis that occurs. But by and large, you can set those boundaries and say, I am investing in ministering to my family right now. Like, imagine me in church with a line of people and I don't know how to prioritize, it's like, who do I pray for first? The one that's in front of me? This one right here. As soon as I'm done praying for them, I'm going to pray for that one. And I'm going to talk to that one. And I'm going to minister to that one. You're only one person. Stop segmenting your life and saying that's ministry and this is not. I think that's the point we're trying to make. Victoria said it very clearly. Your family is just as much ministry as anything that you're doing outside of your home. So I hope that answered your question. And make sure that you follow us on Instagram for marriage strategies and to submit questions. DM us, text us 864-428-7131 anytime with your questions. Maybe you'll hear it addressed live, or we'll respond always from text to make sure you get an answer no matter what. But we would love if your question is good that we could share it with the rest of the world too. So this has been a power-packed episode. You may have to go back and listen to it a little bit more. Any final words, Victoria?
No, this has been a needed conversation, and we hope you guys join us next week for another great conversation.
See you then.